All right, so we are live.
Yay!
So we can finally see each other. If you don't know what we tried to do on Instagram, then you won't know why we are so excited to being able to see each other right now. There was so much confusion on Instagram; it just would not allow us to see each other. She could see me, I can't see her. It was a mess. So we are popping on to YouTube to have the conversation to talk about what does it mean to give yourself permission to bloom. So this situation has me all like crazy in the mind. I'm like, I don't even know if I'm going to come in, but you know what? We are getting it together. We are here now. The conversation has started. So I first want to introduce myself. My name is Bernadette. If this is your first time here on a live video of mine, if you are just stumbling onto my channel with my very small but mighty following, then I am Bernadette. I am the author of Daughter Heal, a call for fatherless daughters to take a fresh look at old wounds. And I am also the founder of Daughter Heal nonprofit organization, where we create community and we also curate resources for women with fractured father relationships so that they can begin to live authentically and love fully. And so before we even jump into the conversation, I want to give Taccarra an opportunity to introduce herself, and then we are going to dive in.
Hello. Well, thank you, Bernadette, so much. I cannot wait to join in on this conversation. Congratulations to you in the book because I
Thank
just love
you.
everything that you talk about. And let me just say, you look lovely.
Thanks.
Absolutely lovely this evening. But I am Taccarra Renee. I am a life strategist and I help women to live a more authentic life outside of the workplace. We've been taught that we need to go to school, make good grades, get the good job, and do all the things, but there is so much more to life outside of the workplace. And so that's why I am here because I want us to embrace fun and even, just a little bit of irresponsibility in there in that, but just so that we can live a more fulfilling and holistic life in all areas.
I love that. Yeah, just sometimes like just even giving yourself permission to be bad sometimes, to not always show up at your best, I
Mhm.
think is something that we all need to do. We don't all need to always be perfect. We don't all need to be polished every single minute of the day. We are allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to learn from them. We're allowed to slip up and fall, like in all of these things. And I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves permission to really just, live and allow for things to happen so that we can learn from them. So I really love that you said that. So before we dive in, I like to start my conversations with people, whether it's on my podcast that I used to have or just in general, with defining terms. And so for me, when I say give yourself permission to bloom, what I mean is I want for women, especially women who have had either had to deal with, are recovering from, or have experienced in the past relational trauma. I would like for those women to understand that it is okay for them to show up authentically. It is okay for them to take off the mask, for them to stop masquerading their coping and defense mechanisms as their personality. And a lot of times it's really hard for us to distinguish the two.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so giving yourself permission to bloom really is just you allowing yourself to be curious about who you would be if you were not stuck in the trauma that you have experienced relationally. Who
Mhm.
would I be if I didn't have to deal with, like, well, maybe this person will reject me, or maybe they will abandon me like my father did, or maybe this person won't like me if I decide to show up as who I am. And so when we take those things away and when we remove all of that, negativity, or all of this like impulse to please others and impulse to be validated by others, who are you?
Right.
Who do you show up as? And so that for me is really that question of who you would be in that moment. Like, what does that version of yourself look like? Is you giving yourself permission to bloom? Because in all things, in the definition of the statement, and how you define yourself, and the decisions that you make in terms of how am I going to show up in this moment? You don't even have to talk about what you're going to do 5 minutes from now, what you're going to do tomorrow, but in this moment, moment, how do I feel? How am I showing up? Am I going to be honest about that?
Mhm.
Those little steps that we take and those little decisions minute to minute is how we can give ourselves permission to bloom. And so just to start off, just so that we know what we're talking about, I just wanted to share that. So you spoke a little bit about being a life strategist and just making sure that people have a life outside of work and being sure to like show up fully expressed and just making sure that they have opportunities to make mistakes sometimes, like not always show up at their best. When you think about giving yourself permission to bloom, what comes to mind for you?
To me, what comes to mind is honestly being authentic because
Hmm.
we've had so many. I feel like sometimes we as women, I think you even put it in your stories as far as how we are people pleasers and
Yeah.
we take on all the expectations of others, all this, you should, you should, you should, you should. And we carry all of that. And then we can't figure out why we're miserable and why we're unfulfilled. But it's because we've honestly been living the dreams and the lives of other people. And
Hmm.
really tapped into authentically who we are. And so we need to give ourselves permission just to live out loud and be free and in whatever way that looks like, whether it's wearing some different kind of colors, whether
Yeah.
it's whatever, a face full of makeup, if that's what you do, whether you want big hair, being in a relationship with whoever it is that you want to, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
It's just
Hmm.
it's just doing what feels right and what feels good to you in that moment versus being so far in your head and then you're gone from the moment.
Yeah, I love that. Just to amplify something you said in terms of, like when you show up, showing up fully as yourself and what that can look like in the moment in terms of like not thinking about the expectations of others or the dreams of others, but really like what is a dream that you have for yourself? And I feel like so many of us lose sight of what it means to dream your own dream and not think about, well, what did my parents want? Or, like, what did my friends, say that I should do? Or what is the expectation of my family based on, like, the name that we have, or like what everyone in my family does, and all of this kind of stuff. But when we start to really think about, well, what is it that I really want? Getting curious with ourselves about what our deepest desires are and what that would look like if we lived it out regardless of what somebody else may want for us or what their expectation is. Like, how is it that we can, I guess, move away from that? And I feel like this a lot of times is something that is a struggle for young people. Like they leave their parents' house and they're trying to start their life on their own, but they have parents who have expectations of them that they need to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or whatever it is, right? And, like they want to be an artist or they want to be a dancer or they want to be a singer or they want to be something that is outside of the norm of what their father or their mother wants for them. And now they're thinking about, well, if I decide to live purposefully, if I decide to give my own self permission to bloom, it's going to upset my parents or it's going to disappoint them in whatever it is. And
Mhm.
so sometimes, we live in this in between where we don't get to really do the things that we want to do because maybe the one parent that we have left, the one parent who stayed, our mom, or our grandma, whoever it is, who
Mm.
wants this thing for us, but that's not what we want for ourselves. And you don't want to disappoint this one parent that you have. So you're trying to live up to what their expectation is. Meanwhile, you have completely neglected who you are. You have absolutely no idea of what your desires are because like you don't even give yourself permission to really look at that stuff and to dive deep into what your desires are. And you're just living someone else's life. And it's really hard for women who have relational trauma to separate this desire to want to please the people around them so that they will stay and
Mhm.
instead tap into what do I want? What do I need in this moment? And how can I start to honor that?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point that you make, and I'm gonna spin it back to I'm gonna put it almost like a health spin on it because
Mhm.
I see so many women in the nursing field is not, and so many with high blood pressure through the roof. Most of the time, it's not what they eat. It's not that they need to take more medication. It's not any of that. It's the fact that they have let someone stress themselves out so much to the point that their body has now reacted in a fight or flight response mode. And now everything has just gone haywire.
Mhm.
So there was one patient that I had, and like we're trying to get her settled. She just came on the floor, like, but she steady talking to someone on the phone. And as I'm hooking her up to the EKG leads, I'm taking her blood, I'm like putting a blood pressure cuff around her arm, and I'm just looking at it, and I'm just seeing her heart rate go up and up and up. And I'm like, she got to get off this phone. I said, ma'am, can you hang up the phone, please? And
Mhm.
as soon as I said, ma'am, I need you to hang up the phone right now. And when she hung up the phone, all of a sudden, her
Mhm.
starts going back down. And this is the one part that I love about being a nurse, because we look at things holistically. We don't look at just symptoms and then try to cure that. I said, what is going on at home? Because whatever that phone call was, I said, that's what brought you in here. And she was like,
Mhm.
well, I was just trying to help my son and doing this, and he's stressing me out, and he's doing this and he's doing that. And I said, and that's a problem. I said, that's a problem with your health. That is what got you in here. I said, you
Yeah.
allowed this situation to cause so much chaos in your body that you have earned a one-way ticket to my floor, where now you have to be poked and prodded all night.
Mhm.
We got to draw your blood. We have to get your blood pressure. We got to keep you hooked up to these EKGs. We got to take you downstairs early in the morning to get a stress test. You can't eat no more.
Mhm.
You trying to handle a situation that you weren't even supposed to handle.
Yeah. And it's what I think is, especially in the Black community, where, we feel like we have to put on the cape. We feel like we have to always be the savior. Like, they're just, you cannot sit by and allow your loved ones to make their own choices and to make the mistakes that they're going to make and just help them pick up the pieces afterward. You're like, oh, hold on. Wait, I see you going into that thing. I know you about to make a mistake here. Let me try to help you out. But sometimes you really have to, for your own sake, for your own peace of mind, for your own, like, just peace in general, allow people to make the decisions that they are going to make and
Mhm.
let them experience the consequences of the decisions that they have made. And you, being the person, whatever it is, friend, sister, lover, whatever, can support them and how they work themselves out of these situations. But we oftentimes think that our value comes from how much can I do, be, and provide for the people in our lives, because doing that is going to somehow give me more points in the worth department. And
Mhm.
it's like, when I discuss this in my book, I talk about the fact that, the fact that your father isn't there, or the fact that you don't have a great relationship with your father, or whatever the situation may be, does not diminish your worth at all. The fact that they didn't want to have a relationship with you does not say anything about your character. It doesn't say anything about what you are worth. It doesn't say anything about, your likability, or your, desire to be loved, or whatever it is. It says something about them, that they didn't want to engage in a relationship that they should have wanted to. It doesn't say anything about you. And
Yeah.
so when we internalize the fact that, our father's absence is something that is our fault, a lot of times what that does is it turns us into people who want to do anything in our power to make sure that the people who have decided to stay. And a lot of times that is absolutely at the detriment of our needs and desires, of our voice being heard, of us living fully expressed, because we stay inside of the box and we stay in the pocket of what we think people who are connected to us and in relationship with us are going to want to see from us. So we don't show up as authentically as we can. We
Mhm.
don't give ourselves permission to bloom. We don't even get curious about, like, the different desires or, activities that we may want to do or anything like that. We morph ourselves into the version of ourselves that we think is going to be the most palatable to the people around us and that is going to keep them closest to us. And of course, that shows up as people pleasing. It shows up as us wanting to get the outside validation. It shows up as us, doing all of the things to make sure that the people around us have everything that they need. Meanwhile, our needs and desires have been put on the back burner for years. Or you staying in a relationship that is way past its expiration date because, you know, you're with someone. And
Mhm.
it's like there's all these different things that we do that are just, one thing after another, just dropping a chip in the bucket of self abandonment. And we don't even realize that the more we abandon ourselves, the further away we get from who we truly are. And when we are so far away from that, it's really hard to get back to that essence. And so, just with this conversation, with this book in general, my desire is to illuminate for women how you can start to excavate all of the debris that has just like piled up on top of each other in terms of your feelings about yourself and what you think that means and how you show up and why you show up in this way and why do you accept those things that you accept. Like, why is it not okay for you to have needs and desires? Why don't you want to say what they are? Like, all of these things pile up on top of each other and they just make our lives so far removed from what we actually deeply desire to have. And we just won't take the step in the direction of getting there because we're scared. And like, I understand the fear, but there needs to be a path forward, you know?
Absolutely. And it's so funny because I think the crazy thing is inherently we know. It's not that we don't know what to do. It's not that we don't know what direction that we want to move in, but it's almost like we can take a back seat to our own lives. And so even using me as an example, when I was married and going through my marriage counseling, she said, "Hey, Takara, I just want to ask you, um, if this situation that you're in right now," she said, "would this situation be okay for your sister?" I said, "Oh, absolutely not."
Mhm.
She said, "Okay, so why is it okay for you?"
Mhm.
Dumbfounded.
Mhm. Mhm.
I could not answer the question for her. So I couldn't tell her
Mhm.
it was okay for me, but it absolutely was not okay for my little sister. But I did know that it was unacceptable for my little sister. I did
Mhm.
know I did not want her in that type of situation. I did know that I would move hell and high water to make sure that she did not end up in this type of situation. But
Yeah.
why I was still in this situation, I couldn't tell you.
And you know what? Go on. I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and sometimes I think some of that is pride.
Mm.
Some of that is also ego because you don't want to be seen as a failure. And so you don't want to say, maybe this wasn't the best thing, or this was the best thing for me in a moment, but now this is no longer the best thing for me.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to quit it. I don't want this to look like I have failed. Again, people pleasing again.
Mhm. Mhm. But you know what it also is? Because I think that that's good, but I think it also is that you have built up a tolerance for that kind of behavior. You have built up a tolerance for, the whatever that cocktail of relationship is. And
Mhm.
because that is something that is familiar to us in our mind, we are okay with staying in it even though we don't want to. Because if it's one thing that our mind is going to do, is going to flash danger when something is unfamiliar. Hold on. I don't know where we going down this road, what we going to do here. We did not create any kind of responses for this new thing that you're trying to do over here, so it's dangerous. You know what I mean? And a lot of times we view healthy relationships with people who are emotionally available, who want to actually be in relationship with us, healthy relationship with us, as dangerous because we are not used to being with someone who wants to know us, who is curious about us, who is emotionally healthy, all of the things that we deeply desire, we don't have any knowledge about what that looks like, about how to navigate something like that. And that's where the self sabotage comes in. So a lot of times, though we deeply desire to be in relationships with people where we feel seen, we feel loved, supported, we feel heard, we will stay in relationships with people who don't do any of those things, because we have learned how to deal with, we have learned how to navigate those kind of trash relationships, because either it's what we saw growing up, it's what we attracted. And so our mind views those toxic situations as safe and okay to continue with. And so a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't know why I'm always dating the same kind of guy. I don't understand like why I want to be with somebody who loves me and da da da, but I'm always attracting and always with someone who is either a cheater, who doesn't see me, who doesn't pay attention, who is whatever it is. And it's like, that's because you know how to do that relationship.
Yeah.
You don't know how to do a relationship with somebody who is actually curious about you, who really shows up, who loves you, who is expecting for you to like, be your best and like, put your big girl panties on. You don't know how to do that. And
Right.
that will be scary for you. As much as you want it, it will be scary. And so, like, if we get glimpses of that, a lot of times it's like, no, I don't think I'm ready for this. This man is too intense. He over here talking about like, I expect more from you, sir. I'm like,
Like,
I'm
what?
doing all the things. What do you want? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's crazy.
Funny because I just saw a TikTok video where they were having this discussion, and essentially the guy was saying, is it trauma? Like, is this a
Mhm,
trauma response? Because
mhm,
he was like, how do you call someone boring, but they're calling it's like the woman was calling the men boring because they weren't causing any drama. It wasn't
mhm.
someone who was, like, chasing after her every night and be like, "Every night I gotta prove my love," and it was just so calm and easy, and
Yeah.
he was like, "You're so used to operating in, like, chaos and this
Yeah.
and that when you finally settle down and there's none of that, you're like, 'Oh, this is boring.
Mhm.
Oh, let me get
Mhm.
somebody else,' and it's like, 'No, no, 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 no. No, this is what you asked for.'
Yeah.
This man has all the characteristics that you have asked for, but now you wanna write him off because you say that he's boring."
Mhm. Yeah, it's really crazy. It's like, when your system is wired to respond to chaos as the thing that is normal, like something that's calm and cool and like, just like should keep your system regulated. It's like there's all this dysregulation going on. So it's an unlearning is what it is. Like when you get to the point where you want to experience something different, you have to be super clear about what it is that you have been doing, why you have been accepting that, and what results you've been getting. And I'm glad that we came down this road in terms of, like this part of the conversation, because one of the things that I wanted to bring up tonight was the fact that in the third part of my book, in the HEAL framework, the A stands for activation. And activation to me is really important because I feel like you can't consume information and then not want to act on it. Otherwise, it's just entertainment. Like, what are you doing? It's like if you're not doing anything with it, there's no implementation, then there just really was no reason for you to even take the information in. So with the A in activation, one of the things that I talk about is tools, relationship tools. And one of the tools that I give in the book is called a relationship autopsy. And a relationship autopsy is a framework that allows for women to understand what kinds of relationships they've been in and to really look at the patterns of behavior, the patterns of feelings, the patterns of, like emotions, the kind of conversations and things like that that you have been experiencing in these relationships, and see what comes up in terms of what's repeating. So if you decide to ask yourself some questions about what your experience has been in your past relationships, if you're seeing things that are always repeating there, you want to highlight those words, you want to highlight those phrases or those experiences or those feelings or whatever it is, because that right there is like the genesis of what's been going on in your relational experiences. So once you understand what this pattern looks like across all of your relationships, you can now see, what do I need to change in order for me to have different experiences in relationships? And so if you do a relationship autopsy and you see that your relationships make you feel defeated, they make you feel like, you're not enough, you're unappreciated and whatnot, how can you change the experiences that you're having so that you begin to feel appreciated and whatnot? And so, one of the things that I had to do for myself when I did my own relationship autopsy is I had to unlearn this idea that if a person who was interested in me and I was interested in them told me that they did not want a relationship, that was not a challenge for me to try to convince them
Yeah.
that, "Oh, no, yes, you do. You want a relationship. You just don't know it yet, and I'm gonna show up so well for you in this situationship that we got going on, this little entanglement that's happening, that you're going to want to be in a relationship with me." I had to unlearn that because it was just like a challenge to me where I was like, "Oh, you don't wanna be in a relationship, really? How you know?
You
Okay." All right. Let's really see. You know what I mean? And so the appropriate response would have been like, okay, like that's good to know. Thank you so much for your honesty. We are obviously misaligned. So I'm going to take my leave
Mhm.
because I'm not going to try and convince you of something that you clearly said that you don't want. If we don't want the same things, then I don't want to waste your time. And I'm certainly not going to waste mine in a relationship that is not going to yield the result that I would like it to yield. But I had to sit with myself and I had to really think about what my actions were causing, like what was the result that I was getting. Regardless of the fact that I thought that I was being so noble and I was being like a good girlfriend and I was doing like all the things that I should have done in relationships to make sure that the relationship thrived. I was doing these things with people who made it very clear to me that they did not want the same things I did. So I'm doing stuff hoping for a result that wasn't going to come and frustrating myself in the process, putting my needs and desires on the back end in the process, and thinking all the while that, I'm a failure at relationships when I was in places I should not have been in the first place. So it's like unlearning and relearning is a really big part of giving yourself permission to bloom because there's so much that we have done as a result of relational trauma that now needs to be taken away. It needs to be examined. You need to like understand what these things are causing and what the results have been all this time so that you can know like this is not what you want. You're looking for something different. So let's try and do something different for you to actually get that?
Yeah, it's so funny. It's so funny because I literally posted that today.
Mhm.
I said 3 phrases with honorable mention you need to look for, and I'm like, if a
Right?
man says this and you want to be in a relationship, I'm like,
Mhm.
you need to exit stage left immediately.
Right.
I was like,
Right.
if he says, I'm not looking for a relationship, if he simply says, I don't want a relationship right now,
Mhm.
and if he says, I don't think I'm the man for you, I said, you need to leave. Or if he says, I'm getting my finances together, because usually it's
Mhm.
over pattern. But I was like, especially that last one, I don't think I'm the man for you, because a lot of us are um, so optimistic and we're such encouragers that we're like, no, why would you do
Mhm.
that? Oh,
Mhm.
here, come here, come here. Let me, what do you mean you're not the, like, how are we going to tell you what you just told us, right? But
Right.
to like change your mind. And so my one of my coaches said something that really blew my mind, but she was like, it's this concept from Tony Robinson's that he says there are 6 needs that a person has, 2
Mhm.
primary being certainty and significance.
Mm.
So typically, they say a woman solely in her feminine energy is usually looking for certainty. She's looking
Mhm.
for surety. She's looking for safety. But a
Mhm.
woman in her masculine is typically looking for significance. She wants to feel needed. She wants to be there for everyone. And so you have this need, and instead of you giving it to yourself, you're trying to give it to everyone else so that way you can make yourself feel good because now you have all these people that need you. And then,
Mhm.
so because you like to feel needed, you then end up in relationships with people that need you. And then you wonder why you feel drained.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so good. And the thing is I feel like we mistake being needed in those kind of relationships as like, I'm worthy. And
Mm,
if I'm needed, the person won't leave. If I'm needed and if I'm feeling this need, then this person is going to see me as valuable in all the things. And it's like, I feel like a lot of us don't really understand that dealing with relational trauma really has you in survival mode. And survival mode is absolutely masculine energy. A lot of us who have had to deal with relational trauma for a very long time do not even understand what feminine energy is outside of sex. You have no idea how to be in flow, how to receive well.
mm,
You don't know how to do any of those things, especially if you are in a environment, if you grew up in an environment where you saw, your mom or your grandmother, whoever it is, had to like work really hard to pay bills, to do all the things, and they didn't have someone that they could rely on, then in your mind, it's like, okay, well, I have to rely on myself, or maybe I can only rely on like maybe one or two people, and I don't want to ask for anything because I know how hard, my mom or my grandmother, whoever it is that's raising me, is working. So I don't want to add to the stress of anything. So you don't ask for help when you need it. You suffer in silence. You try to figure out all of what you have to figure out on your own. And a lot of times you're looking for what is the next best step, living fully in survival mode when you're dealing with that. And it's really hard for you to turn that off because you are used to this feeling of unsafety being your norm. So
mm.
now it's like, even though you want to feel safe, you want to allow for someone else to take the reins, or you want to, like be in a relationship where you can just like lay your burdens down, or you can, show up authentically, or whatever it is. You have no idea what that even feels like, like it's just foreign territory. So I completely get that.
Yeah, and I think it's messaging too,
Mm,
because our parents did not first from I think for the majority of us, our parents did not come out their mouth and say verbatim, this is what you need to do.
yeah.
But as a child, looking at it and the perspective that we received from it, that's the messaging that we got. So
Hmm.
now my grandmother very clearly did tell me, babe, you need to make sure you're established before you get into a relationship with someone. But she was also coming from the experience that she had. She had
Hmm.
children when she was young. Her and my grandfather, they were growing up together. And there was just a lot of things that they had to do just to kind of get it all working. And which
Hmm.
for her, she was like, man, if I had an education, we could have been living life a lot easier because we wouldn't have had to struggle this way. She didn't tell me that part, but she was giving it to me from another perspective. But I'm like, oh, well, I got to have me a job so that I can have money so that I can pay for things. And then, even if my mom gave it to me from another way, we also have to look at perspective, like
Hmm.
giving me this advice? Is this a married woman giving me the advice? And do I want to be married? Is this a single woman giving me an advice and I want to be married? What is the perspective that you're getting this advice from? Because you have to make sure that they align. Because, yes, as a single woman, you should be independent. You should be supplying everything that you need, going on the trips, doing all the things. However, if you are a woman that desires to be in relationship with someone,
Hmm.
you then have to switch the independence, and then you have to become interdependent with each other.
Absolutely.
And you
Yeah.
can't do everything. But that was one of my biggest struggles when I first got married, because I would I would not help my ex-husband do anything. He, do you need help? No. I
Hmm.
I got
Hmm.
struggling with it. But I'm like, and it was like he was like, you're not allowing me to help you. I'm here, but you're not allowing me to do anything. I had no idea how to ask for help. Like that
Mhm.
to me, that's one of the first things that we as women have to learn how to do. We have to learn to ask for help from anyone just to even make our lives a lot easier because we're taking on so much weight and we're just like, I don't know why I'm tired. Yeah, it's because you're doing everything by yourself.
Yeah.
Even the people at the grocery store ask you, ma'am, can I help you with the bag? You said, no, thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And even just to go back a little bit to what you said in terms of, like finding wise counsel from people, the one thing that I want to say about that is like, if you're looking for wise counsel from someone, I would really encourage you to examine the fruit of their life before you ask them for advice. Okay? Because yes, you're a single person who may want to be married and you want to talk to your married friend or whatever it is, but is the fruit of her life something that you want to experience? Okay? Because if it's not, that's not the friend you're asking. That's not the friend you ask. Regardless of the fact that she is in the kind of relationship that you want to have, examine the fruit of their life before you go asking for and following advice from some of these people, because though they mean well, though they love you, and they mean the best for you, sometimes they don't have the capacity or the intellect or the lived experience or even just the ability to be able to extrapolate lessons from what they have gone through to guide you in a way where you can avoid the pitfalls that they may have. And
Mhm.
it's like it is so important for us as women, especially when you are on a healing journey and when you have decided that you want to start showing up differently, and when you have decided that you want to have, like, different experiences, and now you want to honor how your body feels, what your deepest desires are, and things of that nature. You want to make sure that the people in your life, the people who are surrounding you, are people who know what it is that you would like to do, who are familiar with your story, and who can give you the kind of advice to help you to get around the pitfalls that you may not notice, especially as it relates to experiences that you want to have, but you have not yet experienced. It's so important to surround yourself with people who are going to be there for you in that season, because the one thing that I have even experienced myself, and it's something that I don't want other people to experience, is being around people or asking for advice from people who may not want to see you win, or who don't know how to be able to guide you in a way that's going to help you to avoid some of the things that they went through. Sometimes people will give you advice that will lead you straight into the kind of situation that you don't want to be in, and it's like that they don't know how else to explain things, or they don't know, like, what else to say. So it's so important that you think about, like, who do you need in this season. It may not be the people who are currently around you. And even just to talk even more about that, like, when you decide to give yourself permission to bloom, you need to be ready for some people to not accept what it's going to look like when you show up fully expressed. You
Yes.
need to really know that you may lose friends, that family may start acting funny around you, that people may start showing up differently. They may not show up at all anymore. They may try to downplay what you're trying to do and may try to make it seem as if you're acting funny, when what you're trying to do is be your fully expressed self. So giving yourself permission to bloom sometimes is going to be lonely, until who you are fully expressed attracts the people who you are supposed to be in relationship with. And when those people come into your life and they celebrate the work that you've done and the person who you are showing up as, then you will start to see, wow, okay, this is what I said I wanted. This is what I wanted to experience. And though it might be scary, say that. And this is even what I was saying last week. Like, it's okay for you to share with the people who you are in aligned relationships with that I don't know how to navigate these waters. This is new for me, being in a relationship where, like, I feel like, it's mutually beneficial. And, you're there for me the way I'm there for you. And it's not one sided all the time. I don't know how to be in a relationship like this. This is new for me. This is a little scary. I might buck the system a little bit, but give me some grace. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's so much.
Yeah, and I love that too because even as you're talking about giving yourself permission to bloom and putting yourself in alignment with, the people that can fall on board with your vision and your dreams and all that. It's like, in addition to giving yourself permission to bloom, you also give yourself, like you just said, the ability to be vulnerable. It's so
Mhm.
much easier to be vulnerable with someone that you are in alignment with, someone that you can share your dreams and your desires and all that. Because sometimes the vision is so big, we just have to share it. We
Mhm.
have to share it with someone, but it can be so deflating and disappointing when you share it with someone and instantly they're like, "Let me poke holes in this." Be like,
Yeah.
dream. Let me dream a little bit." But that's so key. What you were saying is that vulnerability piece, because I feel like even still how we have like that strong woman mantra, the cape that you were talking about earlier, how we
Mhm.
have to remove that. That's a big part of that because once we're able to be vulnerable and say, yes, yes, this is the thing that I absolutely want,
Mhm.
that is then when we give all those things that we've been desiring and asking for, that's when we give those things permission to come to us because now we've had the courage to say it out loud. We've had the courage to look for our tribe. We've had the courage to say, "Bring it to me."
Yeah.
Bring it to me because this is what my soul has been desiring the entire time.
Mhm. That is so good. That is so good. I feel like as, this conversation is coming to a close, though I feel like we could just go back and forth with this for a while. I
Yeah.
just feel like I just want for people to know that it's okay for you to desire what you desire. And it's okay for you to not know yet how you're going to get there. But what I don't want you to do is being stuck in relationships, in situationships, just diminishing yourself because you feel like, you can't show up authentically because you won't be accepted. The scary thing about showing up authentically is that, yes, you do risk being rejected, but it's by the wrong people. And once those people leave and they actually free up the space that you have, now the people who are meant to be in your life, the people who you are supposed to be in relationship with, they have the opportunity to come in and fill those spaces where people did not want to be in relationship with you anymore. So yes, it can be a little scary to put yourself out there authentically. And of course, there's ways for you to make that decision, minute by minute. It's not something that you need to try and like think about like what is this huge strategy. It's just like in the moment, in this situation right now, what is my most authentic self saying in this moment, and honoring that, because it really is a moment to moment decision. It isn't something that you have to try and think about long term. In the moment, who do I need to be? How would I like to show up? And is it honoring how I feel in my body, what I'm thinking about, and who I want to be? Because if the answer is yes to those things, then that's the decision that you need to make. And that's it. That is how you give yourself permission to bloom.
Yes, 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 yes. That's so good because even with that, I feel like sometimes because we have not paid attention to our desires for so long,
Mhm.
don't know what that intuition feels like anymore. We completely
Yeah.
ignore it. And so I feel like this is like the very first thing. Even if we're completely wrong, we can say, okay, that wasn't the feeling.
Mhm.
Let me try it again and let me see
Mhm.
what happens. So then you can start to become very aware of what's going, because that is our superpower as a woman. We have that intuition for a reason. But
Yeah.
now it's time for you to bring it back to life. It's time for you to bring it back up so that you can start making those decisions that are in alignment with you, that are in alignment with your desires, and that are in alignment with your higher calling.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much for coming on. This is such a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate
Of
this was good.
course.
Really
It
good.
was. It was. And I just wanna call out how festive you look. Okay. Like
Thank
I see
you.
you. I see the ears. I see the
Like a
tree.
little treat.
Okay. I see it. I love it. All right, girl.
All right.
Bye.